Greetings to you, friends. Today we will go to one of the most exciting travels of human thought. We will talk about what Everett's multi-year interpretation means and how it can be connected with the most daring idea, the idea of immortality. It sounds like fantasy, but this is not a fiction of writers. This is a real philosophical interpretation of quantum physics, proposed in the middle of the 20th century. 1. What is quantum reality? Quantum physics is a science that describes the world of elementary particles. It is at this level that we are faced with amazing and at first glance paradoxical phenomena. Particles can exist in several conditions at once, until an act of measurement occurs. This phenomenon is known as a superposition. The simplest example, the electron can be here and there at the same time, and the photon can pass immediately through two cracks in the experiment. But as soon as we look at the system, she seems to choose a specific result. Classical physics did not explain how and why this choice takes place. It is here that the work of Hugh Everett appears. 2. The radical idea of Hugh Everett. In 1957, the young physicist Hugh Everett proposed that they would later call a multi-world interpretation. His hypothesis sounded revolutionary. No collapse of the wave function exists. Reality does not choose one outcome, but branches into all possible options at the same time. Imagine you throw a cube. In our daily intuition, he will fall, say, on the number 4. But according to Everett, 1 falls in the parallel branch, 2 in another, and so on to all 6 options. And what is most amazing, in each of these realities there is you observing its result. 3. The investigation of the interpretation. It follows that the universe is constantly and endlessly branching. Any event with a non-zero probability is realized somewhere. We live only in one of these branches, but in fact they all exist simultaneously. This idea was perceived for a long time as a strange and even philosophical game, but over time began to win more and more supporters, especially because it eliminates the need for the mysterious mechanism of the collapse and makes quantum mechanics mathematically cleaner. 4. How is it related to a person? And here the most interesting begins. If the world is really arranged in such a way that all options are realized, then in each branch there is also its own version of a person. For example, you could go to one job or another. In one reality, you chose the first. In the other, the second. And each of these versions continues to live in its own way. But if we consider this idea deeper, the question arises, what about the limb of life? After all, this is also an event that is likely. 5. Quantum theory of immortality. A hypothesis appears here that shocks many. It is called quantum immortality. Her essence is as follows. In every situation where there is at least a tiny chance that a person will survive, somewhere in one of the branches this will certainly happen. Subjective consciousness does not perceive the branches where it is interrupted and always turns out where it continues. It turns out that from a subjective point of view, a person never encounters an absolute end. In his experience, there will always be a branch where he survived. This is an incredibly attractive, but also frightening thought. 6. Example for clarity. Imagine the situation. A person is in danger and the probability of salvation is only 1%. In ordinary logic, most likely the outcome will be unfavorable. But in a multi-world picture, somewhere this 1% is realized. And it is there that his consciousness continues to exist. So step by step, he always finds himself in those branches where his story continues. This is the idea of subjective immortality through a multi-leader interpretation. Now let's figure out what this hypothesis means for understanding a person in the universe, and what problems are hidden in it. At first glance, everything sounds comforting. You can relax because we will always be alive. But there are several serious questions. What exactly is jumping from one branch to another? Our consciousness or something more? Can consciousness be the object of quantum processes? Is this not only a philosophical illusion without a real physical basis? Scientists still have no clear answers. Even if we assume that consciousness follows for survival, this does not mean that objectively a person will live endlessly. In most branches, he still ceases to exist. For others, he disappears. Quantum immortality works only in terms of subjective experience. For the man himself, the end seems to not come. But this does not make it objectively eternal in our understanding. This idea also gives rise to philosophical paradoxes. If a person is really immortal in one branch, then he will face incredible survival situations all the time. His subjective life can be a series of more incredible accidents. It sounds not like paradise, but rather as a test. After all, immortality in such a version is not eternal youth, but an endless continuation in the most unlikely circumstances. Most physicists relate to quantum immortality extremely skeptical. Yes, a multi-year interpretation is indeed one of the possible interpretations of quantum mechanics, but to tie to it the concept of subjective immortality is step beyond the limits of strict science. Consciousness is a complex phenomenon, and science does not yet know how it is connected with quantum processes. Therefore, the idea of immortality through multi-millionth is a beautiful but speculative philosophy. Despite criticism, this hypothesis is valuable as a way to look at the nature of reality in a new way. It makes you think, what is the I? What does it mean to exist? And can we be sure that our subjective experience is limited by what we see around? The multi-umbral interpretation reminds us that reality can be much more mysterious than it seems, and that perhaps the boundaries of our perception are only a small part of a huge space of opportunities. So the idea of Everett opens up before us a whole space of parallel worlds where all options for events are realized, and the hypothesis of quantum immortality is added by a daring bar. Perhaps there is no end for subjective consciousness. It always jumps to where life still continues. True, this is or a beautiful illusion? So far, we do not know. But it is precisely such bold ideas that make science and philosophy incredibly exciting. Thank you for watching to the end. If you like this analysis, do not forget to support the channel and share your opinion. Perhaps it is precisely such thoughts that once will help us understand who we are and what place we occupy in the universe.